Hey dudes, how's it going? Today we are going to look at a little Bible study of the Prodigal Son, or the Lost Son. Prodigal meaning spending recklessly, living an extravagant lifestyle and being very wasteful. So here we go.
There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we have to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'"
The prodigal son is one of 3 parables in the Bible, all next to each other, all about being lost and being found. And these parables show that in a physical way with sheep or with coins, but they also have a really deep spiritual metaphor beneath them. When doing any Bible study, a great way to start out is by asking as many questions as you can. So let's start with asking and answering some questions about the context. Back in the time that this was written, it would have been really offensive to go to your father who was still alive and ask for your share of your inheritance. That was something that would happen once they had died. So to ask beforehand is like saying, "You're dead to me." And even nowadays we know that going and squandering off some wealth that's come from someone else as a gift is not very responsible. And later in the story, when the father and the younger son unite, it's also really unheard of for an old man to go to be running to embrace his son or anyone, because older men were seen as very respectable. So from the father to the son, this was a huge act of love to put aside manners and etiquette to just go run to him and embrace him. Now immediately what we can learn from the story is that we might be like the younger son, and we might go off and do things that are irresponsible, we might sin, and we can always come back to our Father, God, and He will always accept us and love us and forgive us. You might even notice in the story that the father never asked the younger son what things he'd gone out and been doing, how has he been spending the money, how has he been living. He's just happy to be reunited with his son. We also might be able to relate to the older brother and feelings of anger and jealousy when someone else who we feel is undeserving gets the rewards that we feel like should have been for us. And so in a spiritual sense, we might need to humble ourselves to remember that God doesn't judge us by our actions. But on the flip side, we're actually able to get comfort from that. Because if you're someone like me sometimes who sees other Christians and you just think, wow, they are doing such an amazing job. They go to church, they read their Bible every day, they're an amazing prayer, they serve, they're part of all of these different activities and groups for God, it's amazing. I'm not like that. then we can learn that that's not what gets you into a closer relationship with God. Because towards the end of the story, even though it's the younger brother who goes off and is disobedient, he's the one who reunites with the father and has that embrace. Whereas the older brother, even though he's been doing all of these great things, working hard and obeying his father, his heart is in the wrong place, because his heart is coming from a place of anger and jealousy, like we said. But the younger brother is humble. He knows he doesn't deserve anything from his father, and he lowers himself to say, I will be your servant, please would you take me back as that. With God, with Jesus, it's not about your actions, it's not about how good you are, your achievements, your educational status. It's just about where your heart is, and if your heart is for him, then you can have that amazing relationship with him. And this story is actually left on a bit of a cliffhanger, because we don't know if the older brother chose to go into the party and celebrate and be glad to have his brother back. We're simply left with the message that it's about your heart and not your actions. And the second message of the story that is so important is the way that the father reacts to the son. That amazing embrace, no matter what you've done, your father, God in heaven, will always accept you, always love you, and always forgive you. And that is the story of the prodigal son.